Okay, I want to welcome everybody to the February 6th Affordable Workforce Housing Task Force meeting. We'll start out by Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll stand up and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll seek approval of the agenda. Yep, and I guess I'll second, and we'll raise our hand and have we've got an agenda, and I will seek the approval of the minutes. So moved again, I'll second it, and we'll raise our hand and approve that. So now I'll pitch it over to Commissioner Rebholz.
What we're going to look at first is the map of Chakawinity and some of the areas that they've indicated we could consider as buildable property for multifamily. And then we will have Jonathan from Washington come up and talk about cities, property within the city. So. That's okay, is it? Focus it? Okay. Okay. The first thing that Chakawinity told us was that they don't really have any specific areas set aside for multifamily housing, but apply and they'll approve almost anything. So the areas that are in brown, which are here, here, and here, are areas along Highway 33, which travels this way. This is the 17 Expressway, and this is the 17 Business. So the areas in brown are the areas that they would pretty much automatically approve. The areas in yellow, there's for sale property right here and here right now. So those are the areas that in Chakawinity we know would have the potential. Now, the areas that we would like to focus on, and I think Merle will refer us to this, is that you want to focus on public land that is underutilized and whether or not there would be an opportunity to build on those properties, and that you would be looking to partner with the county or the city in regards to that, even the school district in some cases. So, okay, that's Chakawinity. So we've gathered Chakawinity information. Last month we talked about a couple of locations in Belhaven that are available, one of which is owned by the city, and they've already got all of the infrastructure to it. So that's a very, very positive situation there. And with that, then I will ask Jonathan if he wants to come up and make some remarks about the city.
Thank you, John. Spoke with John a few times about this, and the city's currently partnered with the Housing Authority to do some backfill throughout the city with a primary focus on single-family lots. We're currently, we've just kind of started that out. We've had one that's constructed and was sold. The second home is probably halfway through a construction phase. And it is already under contract, and we have plans for a third. That was done through kind of a revolving fund that was created in partnership with the Housing Authority to provide the upfront funding cost to construct the home. The home sales on these are moving forward with the assistance of the Housing Authority. They're doing all the background checks and vetting and things of that nature. We're just providing the funding piece on the front end. With that being said, we've looked at expanding it, just doing a house here and there is helpful. It improves the aesthetics of the community, but it doesn't really provide enough to help the problem necessarily. It's a good kind of an auxiliary plan. We have looked at some possible sites along Leggett Road. We've had a local engineer do a site plan for a possible duplex community or possibly single family or a mixture if we could have an apartment complex with some smaller single family homes there. There are a couple of sites that would be suitable for the west side of town along Leggett Road. Again, where water and sewer is available, we have adequate capacity at our lift stations at that location. And also heading up Market Street, where Somerset is expanding currently for single-family homes. There's some opportunity there to possibly have a mixed-use development. Again, it would be a larger style community, either single-family, duplex, or apartment, or a combination of the three. But again, we have water and sewer capability heading north along Market Street. There's a lot of farmland out that way that may or may not be on the market. Some is listed, some not. But again, I think the opportunity is there for some larger scale development that falls within the ETJ of the city. That's something that we would be interested in moving forward. And I think they're getting kind of outside of the ETJ heading east on 264. The ARP funds that Bath received a year or so ago, that the engineering is taking place on that to provide the connector line from the town of Bath to the city of Washington. That's upgrading the line or the lift stations at the community college. That's our furthest east asset currently. So at that point, we will upsize that location and a couple of other pump stations coming into town. But the line that will be placed from that pump station to Bath is an 8-inch force main that will have some additional capacity to serve Bath. But I think just on a really rough estimate, talking with the engineers that are developing the project, it would have the capacity to hold approximately 3,000 additional housing units between that 6-mile stretch without any major upgrades. Again, with that, though, you would have to identify a site, and there's a lot of farmland between Bath and Washington. You would want to probably do a larger scale development because with it being a force main, you would have to build a pump station in order to gravity into and then pump into the force main. So we have limited access there. It's not just a free-for-all between Washington and Bath, but there are several sites there. Just you're kind of doing a cursory review of the property that's available. There's a lot of farmland between here and Bath. So for north, east, and west, we have some possibilities to expand on what we're already doing. I think the partnership with the Housing Authority has been effective, and we will continue to do that. That revolving loan plan doesn't take a lot of funding out of our general fund base. Again, they're paying that back. I think the definition of affordable housing has kind of gone up tremendously. Sorry about that. But trying to work through that with the cost of everything has been a challenge. I think the homes that they're currently constructing are 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and we've whittled it down as much as possible, in the 170 to 180 range. And then with current interest rates, that's what is affordable. That payment can get up there a little bit. But as far as what was that? Oh, okay. Yeah. But just the construction cost on that has been a challenge. So I think that's something, looking at higher density developments, duplex, triplexes, or multifamily apartments is probably going to be the answer to provide the quantity of housing that we need countywide. But I think the city kind of wading into this with the partnership with the Housing Authority, it's illustrated that we can do this. We've had some discussions with the LGC, the State Treasurer's Office, on how these funds can be provided and try to be creative. I know you have the different funding agencies that the state operates, and sometimes that can be laborious with going through the red tape and waiting. If we have cash on hand, which the city and the county are in very good financial shape as far as providing loan funds of this type, if we're getting that back. But again, I apologize I didn't provide any maps, but we do have several farms that we've identified in the 40 to 80 acre range along Leggett Road and North Market Street Extension. That would be agreeable. The zoning kind of lines up with that, with what we're proposing, and I think we would be a willing partner with the county to push that forward.
Does the sewer go beyond the ETJ and Hay Point, except for Bath, other than that?
It may in a couple of areas, but it's generally inside of the ETJ.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any other questions?
And we also still have the 90 acres that's right
Right.
behind the cemetery
Yes.
that is now willing to be subdivided off of that.
Okay.
It
And
would
we've
be-
looked at several, you've submitted a couple of plans with kind of a mixed-use development through that parcel. The zoning has already gone through
Yep.
for multifamily, so some of that red tape's removed. You may pull some of that off back to single-family, but it seems like that's been the biggest hurdle for the city to get over is to approving multifamily in areas where it currently isn't. But again, that entire parcel is available for multifamily, all the way through from Market to Highland. So that would be, you have water, sewer, and electric in abundance on all sides, so there would be no challenges there.
And what's the status on the Clark's Neck project right there by the boat landing?
I believe the last contact we had with them, they were still working on the tax credit piece. I don't know how that application process works or the timeline on that. It was all contingent upon them receiving that. But again, I think we're still waiting, or they're waiting to hear back on that. But again, that is a parcel that has been rezoned. There's a site plan that's approved. It's shovel ready. If it were to fall through, I think some of the offer on that was contingent on them receiving the tax credit. But if they didn't, Jason Briley, the owner, the developer of Northgate, would definitely sell that. And the site plan's even ready to go, I think, for 60 apartment units at that site.
Okay.
Hey, John, are you gonna need the document camera anymore? No. Good, I'm gonna turn the lights off.
Okay. Next up is our help that came from ECU, Merle Flood, who did the project that identified the housing areas that we have in the county and the need, and also pointed us in the direction regarding the financial impacts and the financial needs of individuals or families in order to move into housing. So he's going to come up and I think identify for us, review some of what he did, and then identify for us what are the funding sources that developers can tap into that are out there.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back with you. Sounds like you all are making some progress, and that's really good. So we were asked in the summer to really look at your housing market and analyze it from what might be missing and where were some areas for success that could be achieved. And so you all were gracious enough to fund a student intern that helped with the research, and then we brought the data together and provided a report for you. I believe it was in November. And so let's just go back a little bit. I think there's been some change in income since this. In 2021, we found that your countywide area median income was $51,000. It may have gone up about $5,000. And that really seems to be the market with your labor shed that was identified for us, that this particular segment of your population was having difficulty in finding housing that they could afford. And so that came from anywhere from your educational, public sector services, manufacturing, boat building, construction, et cetera. And the range of the salaries that we found based on, again, 2021 data, probably up about $5,000 with the 2023 release of data, range anywhere from $31,700 up to about $42,000. And so that really is the area that really seems to be lacking availability of housing. There are a couple of key takeaways. We found that the median reported Rent was about $770, although many people in the real estate industry said, no, it's a little bit higher than that. It's closer to about $1,300 and up for a rental. We did find that the average new residential construction cost between your building inspector offices, that was Beaufort County as well as the city, between $150 and $175, depending on the types of construction for single-family homes. And so land, you have to factor that in. $20,000 was the bottom end, and it went upwards based upon sort of what we heard from real estate professionals as well as looking at sales. So those folks that have an income of $53,000 or less, or maybe even 55, have some difficulty. That was kind of what we found in the study. And that's really your workforce. That's your teachers. That's your public service employees. That's those folks that work in retail that we depend on, that people working in your boat making industries, construction. That's really where sort of the real friction point came in. So if we looked at the median household sale along with the average, the median came in at about $235. And taking a look at today's interest rates at 7.49%, as sort of a look, a 30-year mortgage with $10,000 down would require a family household to have an income of about $67,000, almost $68,000 to be able to afford just the mortgage. That doesn't include PMI, doesn't include your escrows of taxes and insurance. And then if you've got floodplain, that's another. So that's probably an additional $45,000 tied on top of that. So you can really see how it's growing sort of out of reach. So some other key takeaways: housing that is for your workforce is also affordable. You're looking at the same population. In fact, today I looked at the HUD limits for low income. It is $55,600. And if your income at the median has gone up about that same amount, you're at the same break point. Obstacles for affordable housing often do find that land costs, construction costs, they're all pretty much constant. Your cost of labor, your cost of materials. And so you have to look at ways to buy down that price from a land. You're looking at all ways, but how do you buy down the land price? And community acceptance for high-density multifamily development seems to be an obstacle faced in a lot of communities. And it was no different here from a lot of the reports we had. That seemed to be a bit of a difficulty. Government engagements and partnerships with for-profit and nonprofit developers are essential when you're trying to close the gap. No one can do it by themselves. Government can't do it by themselves. The for-profit industry doesn't really have an incentive unless there's some incentive, and the nonprofit industry really depends upon all three working together to really make it happen. So, the missing market, we believe, are for those homes that are about $175,000 or less. I think the report by your city manager said the development that you're working on with the Housing Authority is at that break point. For new single-family occupied homes, $175,000 or less is the market, and rentals at $856 a month. That's really where you need to be, and you've got to have a supply, because right now you don't have a lot of vacancy, you don't have a lot of available properties, period, and then you don't have very much at this price range. So we talked about some next steps, and here, based upon the report, partnerships. I think you started talking about that tonight. It's really important that the county, the city, the municipalities within Beaufort County all work together because it's going to take everybody working in this direction. I think one of the things that I find in rural communities, we're doing this in Bertie County, we've done it in 5 counties, Bertie, Martin, Halifax, Hertford, and Northampton. You don't have the luxury of having a staff person that's dedicated to doing this. And so, however you might consider that in partnership, I think you need to have somebody on board that's working to this end every day, because you don't want to do just a one-off. It's going to take several steps to get to close this gap. So someone that has knowledge that can do this for you is something that I would recommend that you want to look at. And then you want to develop a housing strategy that touches availability and supply and preservation of your existing housing stock. I think those are key points that you need to do. So that housing strategy would provide additional rental as well as home buyer occupied homes, as well as steps to preserve your existing housing stock. Next, and you heard a little bit about this, identify land that is available. And we think, obviously, density is critical. I teach planning, and one of the things that we try to teach is that people have to get comfortable with density. You're probably looking at better than 6 to 7 units per net acre to be able to densify, because the cost of land is so expensive. And you've got to densify it in order to justify the price, not only the price, but the infrastructure required for housing. I think we heard in the summer by a local engineer that was here, $500 a linear foot to develop a piece of property with water, sewer, roads, and all the infrastructure. $500 a linear foot. So it starts getting really expensive, especially when you tap land on top of that, and then you've got the cost of infrastructure and then construction. So you've got to buy down that price. So areas that can be allowed for multifamily and higher density are critical with limited environmental limitations. We realize that you are in, sort of the edge of the coastal plain, getting closer to the sound, and so that's a big issue. And zoning entitlement approvals. Those are critical in any type of development. And so I did speak with Commissioner Rebholz about considering the idea of public land, because if you really want to get a quick splash, one of the things that you might do is take an inventory of public land that meets these criteria and make it available for development partnerships, either with public, for-profit or private nonprofit developers, and particularly the low-income housing tax credit program. So when I say low-income housing tax credit program, that is not the traditional Section 8 as people think. That provides rental for that very population that's missing housing in your community. 60% of the area median income, which are people making between $42,000 and $50,000 annually, depending on their family size. And so it's going to take layered financing. And so as you develop that housing strategy, you're going to identify local, state, and federal funding programs. In the study, we identified several state and federal programs that might be applied for. I'm going to talk about a federal one that would provide continuous funding potentially for a multi-county jurisdiction. One of the things that I found whenever I was doing affordable housing for about 25 years, unless we had continuity in funding, we were doing one-offs. And one-offs are good. You've got to have some success. But to really address and make an effort, you've got to have continuous funding. Rural communities don't have the same advantages that metropolitan communities, because you put in great applications, but there's more need than money that goes around, and if you don't have sort of a continuous funding source, you wait until your next turn. And so that becomes an issue that needs to be addressed. I've shown two pictures of developments I did whenever I was in Greenville using the low-income housing tax credit program, and this is what you can produce on land that would be available with the right development partner, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So you're going to want to consider some partnerships with for-profit developers that are engaged in this type of development. Maybe you've got this inventory of public land that meets the criteria that I mentioned previously, and you do a call for developers, and you weed out and find the best one that fits Beaufort County or Washington or Chocowinity, and you select them. And you provide them the land up front to do a development such as this, on the understanding that it's got to be quality. Now, they've got enough incentives in what they do to make sure that it has quality and is safe and gets rid of some of all these concerns that people have about workforce or affordable housing. They have a note, and they've got to make sure that it stays in good shape, or those tax credits get revoked. And so these can be a very quick way to get into providing some needed multifamily housing in your community. One of the programs that I talked about last time is a multi-county funding source that would require an interlocal agreement for funding, but you could be eligible for funding continuously through a program called HOME. It's called the HOME Consortium. It's a federal program. Now, federal programs bring a lot of red tape. However, this is one that could provide funding as long as the program exists, and it's existed for more than 30 years, where Beaufort, Craven, Jones, and Washington counties and the municipalities, if they would agree, could receive funding of up to better than $600,000 annually. That's not a lot of money. But if you need money to fill in a gap, maybe you use USDA funding, either their new production or existing single-family rehab program or their multifamily program, and you need to close the gap. This could be money that could be used to help bridge that gap if the multi-county jurisdiction would agree to form a consortium, go through the process, and be eligible for funding. So this is one of the ways that municipalities in urban communities are able to have a continuous effort. They put some local money in it. They apply for every bit of state money. I can tell you when I did it for 25 years and became an entitlement, I was using entitlement, North Carolina Housing Finance Agency money, local money, home money. I was finding every bit of money that I could to close that gap, because at the end, it still has to cash flow. Just because it's affordable or workforce, the product still has to cash flow. And so you don't get rid of that because it meets that critical need in your community. The program was created in 1992. It has been ongoing since. It provides housing for low and moderate income families. Again, for a family of four in Beaufort County, that's a little bit better than $55,800. So it's hitting that critical market that we're hearing is critical in your community to provide housing for. It does provide direct funding to individual communities or multi-county or multi-city areas that are linked geographically. We would recommend that not immediately, but as you build a program, this might be something you consider, and you would consider the non-urban county area for funding. I've run the numbers. Beaufort, Craven, Jones, and Washington could potentially receive better than $600,000. There's a statutory minimum of $750,000. If you make more than $500,000 in the formula allocation, but not $750,000, communities have to make up the gap only in year one. But then they receive their annual allocation going forward. Now, when we did this with Bertie, Halifax, Hertford, Martin, and Northampton counties just a year ago, we were under that. We were $587,000. By the time they went through the process, they got $816,000, so they didn't have to make up the money. And so that just shows the flexibility in congressional appropriations that can result in funding that got them above sort of that 750 threshold. So this is what is potentially available. And again, you will continue to use North Carolina Commerce funding of CDBG, except you can't really do a lot with housing with that anymore. Really, your play is in the Housing Finance Agency and Golden Leaf, as well as the Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Agriculture. But those come with a lot of red strings. I can tell you that we partnered recently with the Housing Finance Agency as well as the State Employees Credit Union. And the State Employees Credit Union is what funded our work in the 5-county region I mentioned. They are willing to work with communities that work in partnership and come up with a strategy to address housing. And so we would put you in touch with those folks as you continue down this path. But I think you all have done the hard work of deciding we've got an issue, how are we going to address it? Our recommendations are just based on sort of where we see you going and what might yield you some benefit. I certainly believe taking an inventory of public land, partnering with the municipalities, determining how you're going to fund someone to do this on a daily basis, and then finding a quick win and thinking long-term are the key next steps for you. The home consortium might be something you grow to in about 2 years or a year. And I think certainly forming the partnership, identifying land, resources, and utilities would be your first steps to get started. All right, did enough talking. I'll stop there and see if there are potential questions or things that I've not answered for you.
How about opportunity zones for affordable housing? Is there any correlation between the two?
Most of Eastern North Carolina does comply with that. We've got several areas I've just been recently looking at. It does provide an incentive to the developer from a taxing standpoint. It's not necessarily an automatic rollout of cash. And what happens particularly with tax credits that are available for affordable housing or historic preservation planning, there's a third-party syndicate that buys the credit, and so that provides an equity injection into the product. Unlike the opportunity zones, which is really more of a tax credit to the individual investor.
What if you have a specific critical need, like say teachers? Are you able to address that group without causing problem with discrimination or anything like that?
So Commissioner Rebholz shared with me information in Bertie County, and we just did a similar bit of work there, and we learned of their program as well. They did a lot of private funding with theirs, and it did not cause them any issues in that regard. It's a great model. It brings and goes back to one of my points. It takes a lot of layered money. You're going to be using several dollars, so you can do that. It just requires everybody sharpening their pencil and coming up with a variety of funding sources, because one source won't fund it 100%.
Private money,
Yeah, private and public, yes.
private and public.
I really think that you've got a unique opportunity, because even though you've got a population that you find that it's critical to have housing, there's something about Beaufort County that people work outside of Beaufort County and they come back here. That means you've got a quality of life that people appreciate, and they're willing to live here even though they may have to travel for employment. A lot of communities that we're working in now are still trying to find what their niche is. You've got it already. The real challenge is how do we keep that income here and provide the necessary housing so that we don't lose that critical population that supports everything that's going on here in the community.
Is that report available to us?
I'm going to leave it with them. I've left some paper copies.
Everything's
Can you
great.
put it up on the web?
Yeah. Okay, when we started this a little less than a year ago, we didn't know what we didn't know. We knew we had a problem, but we had really no clue where to go on the solution. And that's one of the reasons we decided to connect with Merle on that and get the information that he's provided already. But beyond that, we were stymied as to still what the next steps could be, because we didn't have a view of the possibilities. So let me pass out to you. We talked about this briefly. Information from Beaufort County. We'll talk about it. Okay. Earl's already talked about some of the work they've done there, but we had an opportunity to go up there and visit with their partners for Bertie County and sit down and talk with them about the program they have, what they've done, and how they did it. So they've got a similar problem. Bertie's got 18,000 people, so they're significantly smaller than we are, which means they also have significantly lower resources. But they recognize the same problem. It started in 2017 when the school board came to them and said, we're losing teachers because we have no place for them to live, and we need to come up with a solution. So the two groups, the two boards worked together to identify possibilities, and they had heard about the program over in Hertford, which had been completed several years before that. But interestingly enough, they've got 16 teachers starting this fall from outside the country that are there, including France and some other places in Europe that are coming to work in that county. And so it was even more critical that they had a place for them to live, so as this gained momentum. So what they did was they identified that the State Employees Credit Union will partner with nonprofits to fill a housing need, and would put up the money, the mortgage essentially, on it at 0% interest for 15 years, which they did. And they got that money a little over a year ago. So it was still when interest rates were already starting to edge up. We haven't talked to them, so I can't tell you what it is now, but it was 0% then. They next determined the location and need by surveying the county employees and the teachers. And they had 101 teachers raise their hand and say, we would like to we'd be interested in renting an apartment. Well, they knew they couldn't do that because even the State Employees Credit Union wasn't ready to put up that much money. So they decided to start small, and they found other partners, including the cities, the counties, Golden Leaf, local businesses, and other nonprofits, along with some money that was funded to them from the state legislature. The next thing they did was they hired a general contractor, a civil engineer, and an architect. They found land with water and sewer. They found 5 acres. They're using 3, which goes to what Merle said about 8 units on an acre. So they're using 3. And specifically when they were seeking it out, they found land that was owned by the city, that was excess property that the city gifted to them, to this nonprofit. In any case, they're building, I think it's 1,200 square foot apartments, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, that they're renting out now for $800 a month per unit, including the utilities. And they're furnished with the appliances, including washer and dryer. So $800 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, 2-bath. If you get husband and wife in there that are dual income, or you get 2 teachers in there, then you're splitting that rent, obviously, and it makes it much more affordable, much more plausible. They picked the 800 number. I think they said Hertford is at 7. They picked the 8 because of the higher costs, and they worked backwards into the model. So from our perspective, we've spent time with the county commissioner there that helped develop the plan, took us on site. We walked through the units, spent some time with the general contractor, and understanding exactly what the needs and the wants were of the constituents plus the contractor and the development. It is going to come in at budget. It'll be opened at the end of March, and they'll be starting to rent it out. And there's lots of things, iterations of this they go through. Part of the rent, part of the $800 goes towards reserves, because they know they're going to have to fix apartment units up as people leave and new people come in. So there'll be new painting that'll have to take place, appliance repair. They didn't do any carpeting because they didn't want to have to deal with that. They don't allow pets. So there's some things in there that are limiting. They are not planning at this point to rent any units to anybody besides teachers. But the process that they went through in surveying people, I think, was something that we can do ourselves. We can set out to survey county employees, be it teachers, first responders, skilled tradespeople, and to determine the need in terms of how many people will be raising their hand to go after something like this. And then the next steps for us, I think, would be to engage State Employees Credit Union to understand exactly what they still have that's available and what the rates would be and what the steps are that we would need to go through to consider something like this. So, in any case, it gave us a direction, I think. It gives us a end point to work towards, and it's pretty exciting, I thought. So, any questions?
Who manages the property once it's built?
The nonprofit.
The nonprofit?
Nonprofit, and
They do all the screening of the applications?
they do all the screening. They have two employees that they have that'll handle that, plus, well, one of the two is a maintenance person. So you've got a maintenance person and an office person that handles that. At the end of the 15-year mortgage, I asked them, what happens then? I mean, and their thought process anyways is that since most of the rental income will be profit, they're going to start pushing it back into additional units, additional housing. Anything else? Okay. So directionally, I think that we have at least a model that, go ahead.
Who's all on the task force?
On this task force,
Yeah,
it was the people that were listed in the email that went out. Did you not get it?
no.
Okay, I'll have to get you that list. We can get you that list.
And does the nonprofit, how are they funded? Where do they make their money from?
They make their money from the rent,
Okay.
the $800 a month. Now, interesting enough,
Upfront, though?
up front, they got the 3.2 million from the credit union to pay for construction. That's where the construction loan came from. Interestingly enough, they've got an agreement with the school district that the rent is automatically deducted from the teacher's pay and sent and deposited into the account of the nonprofit.
So what's the gross margin on the payment? How much money are they making a month?
I can't tell you that right now. We need to weed through a lot of that. They did it all working backwards from that. So if your intent is to charge $800 a month, then you work backwards through the construction and then into the actual net profit. But we would need to go through that exercise. In fact, that would be required by even the credit union. But the good news is they'll lend us their template, so. Any other questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Floyd made the point a couple of times about having somebody that gets up every morning thinking about this. Sooner you can have somebody in that position, because you look at the complexity of funding sources. This is not a part-time job. It's not something that I don't think any of you guys do part-time. Anyway, just.
They were successful up there doing it, though, with volunteers and help.
So with that state employees loan at 0%, you're still paying principal payments. on
Yes.
it, Correct.
Right. Out of the $800
So.
per month.
If you do the math on that, I mean, they're $720 a month for the principal payment on that. They're only making $80 per
Per unit per month.
unit per month, and including utilities.
The 80, yes, including utilities.
So that's, you got a $2 margin.
Could be.
And,
Yeah.
if
It's,
that.
yeah. I mean, if you look at the, I don't know if they put it down there or not. The total build cost was $4,268,000, of which $3.1 million was what they're paying back.
Yeah, that's the only number I ran.
Okay.
But at a almost a .001 interest rate, because it won't give me a number without putting some sort of interest rate, you're at $17,000 a month. And divided by 24 units, you're at $718.50 a month.
Yeah.
That's a super, I mean, unless the electric company is giving you the utilities, and you're still only making $80 a unit. I don't know how their math works on that. I'd love to see it.
And that's what the exercise we'll have to go through.
Yeah.
I mean, we may have to have more than 80, theirs is $800 a month, and we
Yeah.
may have to have more than that. But the beautiful thing here is that this is not, there's no government money in this, so there's none of the red tape and none of the restrictions that come with that. So, okay. Next steps will be to, and I guess I would like, how many people are actually on this board that are here? Yeah. Yeah. I guess I would like like you to tell us whether you think pursuing this is of value in terms of running out the numbers and understanding what it would take, pursuing the employees' credit union and getting some information, understanding what their requirements are.
So the answer is yes. I mean, we need to explore every opportunity until we can. But I'd be very curious on the, something's got to be an annual income of one of these, you know, whether the counties are doing $160,000 a year, each year, coming out of their budget, then that would make sense, because then you got $160,000 of profit per year. That would, you know, per county, so you would have $480,000 worth of profit if those three are giving it yearly, or if it's just a one-time donation towards the project. If they were giving it annually, you turn profit pretty quick.
I'm sure it's not annual,
Yeah.
so we'll have to go back through the numbers with them again. The one thing they did tell us, though, was that the employees' credit union gave them the first 6 months of principal payments back.
Oh, nice.
So, which was very interesting. So, okay, just I guess a show of hands, all of those that would say we should pursue this to find out more information about it, okay, and then bring it back. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, Randy, you got any other? Okay. Okay. With that, any other questions that relate to, or ideas about us pursuing something else? Okay, we will go attempt to inventory the public land okay, which I think Earl suggested is the first step. We will work on whether or not there's anybody within the organization or an organization that would be able to spend a little bit more time on this. And then we will work to answer the initial steps in this project with regards to speaking to the State Employee Credit Union. We'll try to get a copy of the spreadsheet from them that they used to determine what their costs were going to be on a monthly basis. And then bring that all back to you all. Okay? Anybody else have any thoughts, suggestions? Pull a pin out of the grenade? Okay, with that, I guess we're done, we're finished, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, second. Thank you all. Appreciate it.